You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Weitz. And on today's episode, we're going to be joined by photographers Sara Bennett and Joseph Holmes, who coincidentally happen to be a married couple. Like our past conversations with Ben Lowy and Marvi Lakar, and with Stephen and Betty Wilkes, we like to understand how photographic work and photography itself exist within a relationship and what role it has in the life of a couple. In this case, we have a situation in which one member of the couple, Joe, has been a longtime photographer, dedicated to the craft for many years, while his counterpart, Sara, is a relative newcomer, mostly using photography not as an art or even as an end in itself, but as a means for advocating for awareness and change. In the first half of our show, we're going to profile Sara and Joe's individual work and how they approach their photography. And after a short break, we're going to dive into how photography exists between them, how they have helped and learned from each other. And since they're a married couple, we're going to see if we can get them into a little bit of a fight while they're here. Sara Bennett is a former lawyer and public defender specializing in battered women and the wrongly convicted. She brought to bear her camera on the injustices she saw as an attorney and has since produced 3 series examining our system of incarceration, including Life After Life in Prison, The Bedroom Project, and her most recent work, Looking Inside, Portraits of Women Serving Life Sentences. Sara's work has been exhibited extensively and featured on the PBS NewsHour, in the New York Times, and BuzzFeed. All 3 series are also available as books. Joseph Holmes is an editorial and fine art photographer whose work has been exhibited at Toronto's Contact Photography Festival and New York City's Museum of the Moving Image. His prints are in the permanent collection of the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences, the Lower East Side Tenement Museum, and the St. Louis Mercantile Library Art Museum. Joe is represented by the Jen Beckman Gallery, and although his work is not only of New York, Joe is by all definition a New York City photographer. Welcome, Sara. Welcome, Joe.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Great to have you guys here. So I have a question. What was the first time you picked up your camera? Because you were not originally a photographer. This is something you grew into from a whole different profession.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, when I was a teenager, I actually took photos. And when Joe and I met, we both had Nikons and we used to walk around the city and photograph together. But, you know, life sort of intervened, I would say, for me. And the more Joe got into photography, the less I used my camera. So I actually hadn't picked up my camera in probably a good 20 or 25 years, something like that.
Okay.
You know, we both took pictures. We have 2 kids. We both took pictures of our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I think I just got busy doing something else and
Sure.
Joe got really into it. And I don't like carrying a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
And
also, she was an attorney. He's a photographer. Somebody had to pay the bills.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Actually, Joe used to be an attorney also.
Oh,
Yeah,
It
that's
just
where we
comes
met.
out.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Same
Okay.
office.
Yeah.
Wow.
We were legal aid attorneys.
Oh, okay. Oh, great.
You know, it's amazing. I've been with one person who's made a crazy career choice, but I've never been, it's been a long time since I've been with 2 people who made a strange career choice from going from being attorneys to photographers. Okay.
Well,
Just
one-
a thought.
Yeah, one just took longer than the other, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But do you remember when you first, kind of said, all right, grab the camera with a purpose, or at least a renewed purpose?
I
in this
do.
case,
I
yeah.
was, I hadn't practiced law for a while, but I picked up a pro bono case of this woman named Judith Clark, who was a pretty high profile case in New York State. And I was trying to get clemency from the governor of the state of New York.
She was with the,
Brinks. Yeah, she was one
Right.
of the Brinks people.
okay, right.
And I was trying, she was a pretty incredible person, and I was trying to figure out how to make her be more alive than just on the paper. And I have no idea how I got the idea for it. But it just popped into my head one day that I wanted to photograph women who had been incarcerated with her, who were out talking about her influence on them. And so I invited a bunch of formerly incarcerated women over to my house. I used Joe's camera. He was there. He sort of directed me on how to take the photos. And I took 15 portraits and I put it together in a little book called Spirit on the Inside, Doing Time with Judith Clark. And I sent this book to the governor and state legislators and the parole board and pretty much anybody I could think of. And there's actually 2,000 copies of it that got sold or out in the world. And I felt like it was a breakthrough. in how people looked at her. And it was just, I don't know where the idea came from, honestly.
Well, had anybody ever presented any of these people with, to present somebody with a book of somebody who's in prison, a high profile.
No,
that's kind of a unique
Yeah, it was like
approach.
pretty unusual. I think I had an unusual approach to practicing criminal law in general. But what happened is that when I showed that book to people I know, they started to look through the photos and said, "Oh, she's so pretty. What was she doing in prison?" And, "Oh, she was a mother or she's a grandmother." And I realized that people had a stereotype. And I should have known that, but I actually hadn't really thought about it that much. And I wanted to counter that stereotype. And so then I did my first photo project, which was called Life After Life in Prison. And I followed 4 women, all of whom had life sentences, coming home from prison and their reentry process. And for that one, I think I got my own camera, right? Yeah, I got my own camera. I got my first camera, and it was a Fuji. It was an XE2. And I have to look to Joe to see what the camera was. And
Joe, just so you didn't see Joe's giving finger signals over here.
And I would go out every day and follow these women, and I would come home and I would sit down at my computer, and Joe would look at all the photos with me. So if I took 150 photos, he would sit there and he would talk to me about this one because of such and such. And tomorrow when you're going out, you should think about such and such. So it was like a really good crash course from, somebody else at home who was really supporting what I was doing.
Did you pick up on, Joe, the importance of what she was doing at that point? You got it real soon, I'm assuming.
Yeah. We went through the same mental process of seeing how influential these pictures were from her first project. And so I had a really strong sense that this could be important work. So I was on board right from the get-go.
You also mentioned the 2,000 copies. Now, this is out of your pocket. You just called up a...
No, it wasn't that. No, it was a MagCloud book.
Ah, okay.
And then I just urged people to buy it and pass it out, for gifts or something, to anybody who they thought would be influential. And of course, I bought a lot of them myself and sent them out. But if we want to step back, I stopped practicing in 2004. And in 2004, I said to Joe, I have this idea. I want to photograph long-term. I want to do a project on long-termers in prison. How about if you do the photos and I'll do the writing? Because I think of myself more as a writer, or I did, than as a visual person. And he was like, nah, I don't want to do that. And so I feel like it took me, and actually my newest project of photographing women inside and telling their stories is kind of what I had in my brain in 2004. Only if I had done it in 2004, it would have been one photo with extensive writing. And instead it turned into one photo with the women doing their own writing. And I think it's way more powerful.
Yeah, the dynamic of it was amazing. And also just everyone's, the handwritings and the different patterns. As you're going through it, it gives a very, very different mood. Did you know any of these people before? Did you represent any of these people, or were you just introduced to them?
Obviously I knew my client, Judith Clark.
Right.
Because I was around that community, I knew some of the women. But the first 4 women who I photographed for Life After Life in Prison, the reentry project, I didn't know them. I told Judy I wanted to do this project. She told me she knew somebody was coming home. I called that person. I said, I want to do this project. Will you do it? She said yes. She took me to a meeting of formerly incarcerated women. And I walked into the room, and there were a few people there who knew me. Oh, Sarah, what are you doing? And there were I think there were about 15 women in the room. They all wanted to be followed by me. And I said, I'm only doing women with life sentences. So that was a very conscious choice. I knew exactly what I wanted to say about the criminal justice system, which is people were focusing a lot on the low-level drug offenders. And you could clear out the prisons of the low-level drug offenders, and you're still going to have, massive amounts of people in prison. And so I wanted to show that people who have done really serious crimes are also worthy of our compassion, and we have to figure out, as a society, what we want to do about that.
On that note, one of the things I noticed early on is that when you introduce each of these people, you give their name, you give their sentences, what it was, if they were released, how long they served, but you never, ever say what they did to get there in the first place. But it's very clear that these people did serious crimes, but I did not see a single mention of that. And I think that's brilliant because it does not prejudice the viewer.
Well, the thing is that my first project, I actually did write, I did a little summary of the women's crimes.
Okay.
And then when I did my second project, the bedroom project, I realized I didn't want to do that because that's what society does, is we always say, what did you do? What are the details? Everybody wants to know the details. And that's why people don't get out of prison.
And once it's identified, you're nailed.
Right. And so I actually do say they're all convicted of homicide because I wanted people to know that they were serious crimes, but I didn't want people to say, oh, this one is worthy of our compassion because she killed her abuser, but this one is not because she killed her children. And I have both in my projects. So
one of the things I will note is that I don't think there's an exception to what I'm about to say, is that looking at all of these women, these people, all right, none of them look threatening in these pictures. These are the people you run into on a daily basis. And I think that's what's one of my strong takeaways, is that these are people that have done something real bad. These are people who have paid their dues and been in places that I hope I never have to experience. And they look like they're well-adjusted, normal people that I would interact with on a daily basis.
Well, see, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Because what we usually see are, those mug shots, or that's what we see. Somebody's arrested and their head is down and they look threatening, and we don't see just the ordinariness of people in prison in the best sense of the word ordinary.
And can you talk a little bit about kind of creating that space, creating that look, so that they do give off the impression that you want to give? And obviously you're limited by the places you can shoot them. So can you talk about that?
Well, the bedroom project was, each of the women's bedrooms upon their release. So it was like a very sort of contained environment. Right. And the idea is that it might have been their only space, even if it was just a bed, like just to put them in their own environment. In prison, I had asked to photograph women in their cells, and I was told I wouldn't be allowed to do that. And so, because I thought that was a good corollary to the bedroom. Right. But honestly, I think it would have been boring if I had done 20 photos in the cell. So I was happy in the long run that I was denied permission for that, and then they gave me the workspaces. But once they gave me the workspaces, you get to see people like in an ordinary environment also, and you get to see prison in a way that you don't normally get to see. So
yeah, some of them could just be in an office space or a laundry room or whatever it happens to be anywhere.
Right, exactly. A library. I mean, all that you notice is usually the equipment is really old. Right.
And the colors and the painted institution
it's
colors.
Very institutional, and also the computers are really old when you see them, and it looks, I think, some of them, like the libraries, look more like middle schools than they do like college libraries. But
sure. Can you talk a little bit about the process of getting the permission and
Actually, I just asked. I mean, people ask me, how did you get in there? And I said, I just asked. Right. I think people never think to ask. I mean, that being said, first of all, I had to meet the women.
You underestimate your power in that whole process, because I think initially you met resistance, right? Initially they said, well, no, you can't. You have to shoot only in the visitor's room or the lawyer's room. And then, but you have this persistence that I saw you exercise it when you were a lawyer, and I saw you exercise it when you were a photographer, and you kept pushing and kept negotiating and kept compromising and pushing, and you worked your way. And it took some time. Yeah. And then you actually, I don't know anybody else who has shot women in prison. This is the first project I've ever seen. So I think it actually took a lot of your skill to get to that point.
Yeah, I guess I forgot. I asked, and they said, I asked for the cell, and they said no. And I asked, could I speak to the supervisor? And they said, no, you're not going to get that. And then they said, you can do it in like a conference room where I had photographed a woman before. And I said, that would be a really boring project. And that's where the press always photographs anybody inside prison. You always see it in the same room. So we started talking about, could I do this? Could I do that?
And given the restrictions in terms of where you could and couldn't shoot, were you very conscious of trying to break these kind of the stereotypical images of, like, as you were talking about, mugshots, or even in a library, or did you say like a press conference room where we're kind of familiar with seeing criminals and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, I think the harder part, honestly, was finding the people to photograph. I mean, I think that's where most photographers would have a difficulty. I worked different ways, and there were 2 different prisons. And one of them, my client, Judith Clark, was still there. And so I told her I wanted to do that. And she gave me the names of a couple people. And then it went through word of mouth, and people started writing me. And I went to meet each woman. So like that was very time consuming. I went and I would spend a couple hours with them and talk to them. And then they would tell me where they would work. And then I would ask for permission. In the other prison, I got some names from some of the women I knew on the outside, but nobody inside that prison knew me. And they didn't get my letters, and I didn't know that. And I kept on writing, and I wasn't getting any responses. And finally, after about 2 months, somebody inside prison, one of the women, sent me back a form and said, "Thank you for the book you sent me." I sent them all a copy of my work. "Thank you for the book you sent me. I don't know why you sent it to me. Your letter was contraband." And there was a form letter that said contraband on it. And so then I had to jump through a lot of hoops with the prison. And it took a lot.
So they got the book, but they didn't get your letters.
Yeah, they didn't get my letters.
So they had no idea what the context was.
No. And then I wasn't allowed to go visit them in a certain way. And then I went on a weekend, and then I ended up getting thrown out of the prison. I mean, there were a lot of things that happened.
Like you said,
yeah,
right? But these are lawyer skills, though, as much as photography skills.
Well,
or are they both?
I think they're advocacy skills, honestly.
Okay,
that's what I think they are.
Yeah. And when did the photo skills start to pop up? Did you have to kind of decide when you got there? I mean, you already had your camera. Did you bring lights? Were you allowed to have lights?
No, the situation was very controlled. Mm-hmm. So I had permission. Permission came from the media office in Albany. Mm-hmm. But then I had to get, even though Albany had permission, then the prison still had to, they had their own rules. And so when I would get to the prison, I mean, there's just technicalities. Like you have to tell them every single piece of equipment that you're bringing, everything down to like the pen or the battery, and they take your camera apart and all of that. I just carried my camera and an on-camera flash. That was it. And then you're guarded. You're heavily guarded while you're photographing. In one prison, there were 3 people with me. In the other, there was 1. So it was a very stressful.
How much time did you usually have with the woman?
It depended. Yeah. Anywhere from 5 minutes to 45 minutes. It depended a little bit on the whim of the person who was escorting me on a particular day. Honestly, it was really, really, really stressful, the photographing part.
And because of the pressure put on you by the institution, or the pressure to make the right photo? And
I think it was the pressure from seeing how the women were treated by the guards. And sometimes, like, one of the women was wearing a pair of boots that apparently she wasn't supposed to have. And so then there was a big interaction about it. Or one woman, I came in to photograph her. She's a very young woman, and she works in the nursery. And she was wearing her street clothes, like a street shirt rather than a state shirt. And the person who was the escort that day, the sergeant, got into a thing. Why was she wearing her street shirt? And she said, "We always wear our street shirts in here. We come in and we change into our street shirts so that the babies don't get the smoke from our cigarettes or the outside or whatever." And it just became basically almost like it wasn't really a fight, but the young woman was not, she was not, I don't know what she was supposed to do, but like if she had been an older woman, she would have just been all like, okay, but she got into
some resistance a little bit, yeah.
There was a lot of resistance, and I actually thought that she was going to get hauled off in front of my face and get sent to.
There's a lot of power plays, apparently.
There's a lot.
And I imagine a lot of it is necessary because, again, you're in an environment where a lot of people have a lot of grudges and a lot of
and
history.
So it was just very, and even telling the story, like it makes me feel really stressed out to watch what was going on, and just it was so.
And you were aware that it probably wouldn't have been happening if you weren't there, right?
Right, and you don't know what's going to happen. And then after that, then you have to like try to get the woman to relax and
smile.
Get a good photo. And so I was always really happy when I came home each day and had a photo that I felt like showed the, it's almost like we had blocked out everything that was going on around us. And I got the photo that I wanted.
And could you feel that? I'm sorry. Could you feel that moment at the time? Like, okay, here I'm having a real interaction through the camera with this person.
Yeah.
This is a true portrait.
Yeah, and I could.
At the moment, and then
yeah.
it translated later when you looked at it on the screen.
And I came home one day, and I mean, I'd been photographing for a lot of years by now, like 5 years, I think. And I came home one day and I said, now I'm a photographer. I mean, Joe was always like, if you don't call yourself a photographer, who else will? From day one, he was like, you're a photographer.
Right.
But
and what kept you from saying that? Other than, I mean, does it have something to do with, your relationship with the gear and the technical side, or was it just simply time to transition from your old career? You know what I mean?
I think it was a lot of things. I think one of the things is I live in a house full of artists. Okay, Joe is an artist. Our daughter is an artist. Our son is a musician. Joe's photos. I mean, I live with somebody who takes really beautiful images every single day, and so, obviously we're in two different places in what it is that we're doing. But I did come home one day, and it's the woman in the gym, and it was like a really ugly setting, and it was really difficult. And I think I turned off the lights. I said, "Oh, can I turn off the lights?" And they said yes. And then my flash worked really well. And I was like, "Oh, I got her really," and I got her deep in thought, and I was just really happy.
Good.
You did it.
Yeah, I did it.
I want to take a step back for a second. You had mentioned early on that your original intention was that Joe would be the photographer and you'd be the writer of the whole thing. Do you think it would be as successful if Joe had taken the pictures? Because I think there's something added by having you as a woman photographing these women. And I think there's a dynamic that, Joe, God bless you, you couldn't have pulled off.
Could not have pulled off.
And you know what? This came up a couple of years ago because somebody from the New York Times was really interested in my bedroom project. I met them at a portfolio review. And then I came in and he looked at the photos and he said, you need to learn how to use a flash. These are not good enough. You need to learn how to use a flash. And when you use a flash, come back. And so I went home and I said, he wants me to learn to flash. Why don't you take the photos? And
he said, why don't you learn flash?
He's like, why don't you learn the flash? And then I actually asked, because I'm very close to some of the women I've been following for years, like we're family in a way. And so I asked a couple of them, would you mind if Joe came? Because they all know him. And they're like, oh, that would be fine. And then one of them was like, Sarah, do it yourself. And so also the spaces are very teeny. So anyway, it came up and no, I think the photos would be really different because they're very relaxed with me because if even the women I meet for the very first time, I think by this time I come with a lot of, I don't know if the word is credibility, but I guess other women have talked about them and they've seen the work and everything. And so they really trust me. And I think that comes through in the photos.
Absolutely. And Joe, do you think, looking back, did you ever think about how you would have done the same portrait? And I know a lot of your work is really well lit, your portraiture. And would you have thought to yourself, okay, I need to light this in such a way and blah, blah, blah. And it would have been a whole other series at that point?
Yeah, it would have been. Everything from the lighting and the technical side to actually how I like to pose, how I like people to sit for a portrait is very different than what Sarah does.
You'd have two different aesthetics. I've looked at
totally different.
Yeah.
And right from the start, I told Sarah, that's not my kind of portrait, so she should master it, and she did.
That's great. There's so much we could talk about these projects, and we did talk a little bit in the past, and I'm going to encourage people to take a look at the What is Photography series because Sarah's a part of that. But since we spoke last, you had an exhibit of some of these women, the lifers, I don't know if I can shorten to call it that, at the prison itself. And I really want to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh, that was so amazing. I went to, so I shot in two prisons, and so I went to one of them, and it was the one that I had so much trouble getting into in the first place. So I felt really proud that I developed relationships within the prison, considering it was so difficult in the beginning. And I got to the prison at 8:00 in the morning, and the photos, I have them on vinyls now too. So, I don't know. Getting in, it was kind of crazy because they had been taped up and we had to pull them apart and everything. And then basically 3 of the women who were part of the series, I got permission for them to come and help me. So they helped me hang it. And we just hung it on windows that were in the visiting room. And then the women within the prison were allowed to sign up and come down. And they came down in groups of about 15, I would say. And the staff came. It's the only time I've ever been to prison where I got to visit more than one person at a time. I mean, only once before, many, many, many years ago, I did a workshop in the prison on, some legal technicality. And that was the only other time I was ever there in that kind of situation.
Can I assume that there were no pieces of glass in front of these prints?
No, they're hanging on vials. On vinyls.
Yeah.
You know what was interesting is that I usually hang them with, I was going to use binder clips, but I was told that binder clips weren't allowed. And so when I got to the prison, they had paper clips, and we pulled the paper clips apart and used them like as hooks, because there was kind of like a screen.
Yeah.
I guess we were hanging them on a screen. Like we made a little hook, and I mean, we put up the show really fast. It looked really good. But what was really great was just that prison is a combination of women who are at the end of very long sentences and women who have short sentences. So there's a combination of older women and very young women, and young women tend to be a little more, they're the women who are coming in and out of prison. And whereas the long-termers, they don't really have any kind of recidivism going on. So it was just interesting to talk to the young women who were then inspired by seeing these photos of these women who had done lengthy sentences and didn't know that their peers had been there for that kind of time.
Interesting.
But also just interacting with the staff. It was.
Did you notice any interaction between the staff and the prisoners
women?
in a way that might not have?
And did it
happened?
elevate those relationships, do you think, in any way?
Well, usually people who have been in prison a long time have pretty good relationships with the staff. So, there's some really, really good staff there. I also was there over lunchtime, and the women got to stay, and so they brought me the same food that the women were eating. So I got to see.
I'm jealous now.
But was it everything you had hoped it would be and more to that degree?
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Well,
are you talking about the lunch food?
I mean, I'm a vegetarian, so I had an excuse. I was just like, But also they had allowed me to bring in snacks, and so I had bought a bunch of cookies. But then when I got there, the 3 of the boxes of cookies weren't allowed because one of the ingredients is chocolate liqueur, which is not liquor, but it was like contraband. And so the guards ended up with the big, beautiful boxes of cookies.
Of course.
But it was just seeing the women in a different kind of, seeing them in their element and seeing them interact with each other and then with me. It was really.
And did you show, how many photos did you show?
I showed 16 from looking inside, and then 8 from the bedroom project.
Okay. Right.
And then the bedroom project photos, Joe had actually printed them for me the night before, because once I found out I couldn't use the clips and I was going to be improvising, I didn't want to take my real prints. And so he printed them at a smaller size, and I left them in the prison, and I know they're hanging there now.
Great.
So
that's great. And with the text too, with the written text.
Yeah, that's the bedroom project. So those were supposed to be a little bit inspirational.
Right. Yeah.
Needless
to say. Yeah. And Joe, we're going to get to your photography right now, but I in this process, I'm assuming that you were involved, at least in how do I say this? Conversationally, anyway, in the editing and the decision making and
how to set up the flash.
Yep.
I mean,
True.
Talk a little bit about your kind of role or your input.
Well, Sarah and I do similar things for each other. We both edit each other's work a lot. We both look it over and talk about what works and what doesn't.
Right.
So that was a big part of what I was helping her with, especially in the beginning, when she was still figuring out exactly how she wanted these portraits to look and how to light them. I did teach Sarah what I knew about on-camera flash, bouncing a flash and stuff. That was actually pretty straightforward, but it's all manual for Sarah. She doesn't put anything on automatic mode. She sets the shutter speed and everything manually, and sets the flash, a couple test flashes, and a look at the the LCD, and she knows what she's got.
Are your aesthetics on the same level for the most part? I mean, when you say you feel that this picture's strong, are you usually on the same channel and all that stuff? You kind of agree with each other's edits? Because that your ego comes into
and the stories that I mean, we're always influenced by. We were there. We took the picture.
Oh, right.
We like that one, even though it may not be the best one.
That's tough for anybody, sure.
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah. Great stories, horrible pictures.
I think in the beginning, I didn't even know what to choose. And so it was a real learning process for me. Now I think I winnowed my photos down to probably like 5 or 8, and then he takes a look, and
Right.
and then our daughter always weighs. So-
She's got a great eye.
yeah.
That's great. But more than just like the individual images and picking which is the best, did you talk about, the whole presentation and the whole look and also what you are presenting? Because clearly these images are pretty unique. Yeah. Was that part of the conversation too?
Yeah, I think in the beginning.
I think I really encouraged you to do the bedroom project because you had originally shot sort of an overview of what it was like for women to come home from prison. So there were pictures of getting their first job and discovering the subway and in meetings and in their homes. And I said, what might be a powerful series is if it was much narrower, like portraits. And I don't know, you probably thought of the bedroom, but I'm a big fan of having a series that's a lot narrower and more focused on a similarity, so that they become a nice portfolio.
Right.
So I was a part of that kind of decision making too. We talk about that kind of stuff all the time.
Right. And compared to being a lawyer, how do you feel? Like now 5 years?
She's
or so,
for those
more?
of you at home, she's smiling as the question is being asked.
I mean, do you feel that you're advocating in the same way or in a better way?
Photographing in general is way less stressful,
Mm-hmm.
except for the part where I was in the prison. But
Right.
it satisfies like a different kind of need for myself. I guess like more of an
You're
artistic
doing something
need.
with your life. No. I'm not saying it as a joke. I'm really saying a lot of people don't have a purpose. They're saying, what am I doing here? What am I making? You are making a difference.
And I think that through photos, I'm reaching a huge audience that I've been incredibly lucky with my work. People work for years and nobody sees it.
Right.
And just the attention to my work has been amazing.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like I have a really great platform for issues that I've been thinking about it's almost 40 years now.
And this is obviously not an easy question to answer, or maybe it's impossible, but do you think you can compare, if we're just talking about advocacy and helping, us as a society get, kind of get over our incarceration syndrome, do you think as a lawyer or as a photographer, you'll have
well, they're different.
Impact?
A lawyer, you help people one at a time.
Exactly.
And believe me, there's nothing like getting somebody back their freedom. And I've been fortunate enough to do that actually many times. And that's an incredible feeling, but it's still one at a time. Right. And I think photography, through my photography, I've been able to have like a bigger conversation. So I actually think it's, I think photography
wins.
I think photography wins on a lot of levels.
All right, cool. Joe, what is
How you doing?
I'm enjoying this.
My first question is, what is it about New York? Where are you from? Let's start with that one.
I grew up in a little factory town in Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah?
It's,
okay.
It's like, I guess 3.5 hours west of here, but it's worlds away.
Sure. What's the name of it?
Muncie, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
There's 3 Muncies in the U.S., and that was one of them.
That's the one no one knows, right?
Yeah.
There's 11 Brooklyns. Did you know that?
Oh, my.
Yeah, I researched it.
Oh, my.
Yes. No, another
It's
subject.
good to know.
and can I assume, like some of us, you came to New York wanting to live in New York and love the city, and that's translated into your work. Clearly.
Yeah. I mean, I loved growing up in a little town. It was just like one of those Mayberry RFD kind of childhoods. I wouldn't have missed it for anything. But when I first moved to a city, which was Philly, late after college, that was it. I just like this is where I belong in the city. And then I moved to New York, and
But you were
never leave.
in law school or becoming a lawyer, and when did the photography become a big part of your life?
When he was incarcerated.
Oh, right.
Oh my God, no. No, it was I had burned out on being a legal aid lawyer. And so I went through a couple trial careers. And when Nikon came out with its first digital camera, the D70, and I bought that, it just like totally changed my relationship with the camera. Because I had always been taking pictures my whole life, sometimes for part-time jobs and things like that. But with digital, everything felt like it was multiplied. I could take, 100 or 200 pictures in a day and take them home and look at them the same day and go back out and shoot. I mean, it just meant that I had accelerated my whole ability to. Yeah. And so my eye got better and my whole sense of what I wanted to shoot, everything accelerated. And I got really lucky early on because I submitted one of my first projects. I had this inspired project and I submitted it to a competition at the Jen Beckman Gallery. She used to have this competition to offer to represent people. And I submitted this one portfolio, the first portfolio I really shot, and she loved it. And it got me recognition from her. And a year later, she represented me. So it was sort of like a very early success.
Right.
What was your topic? Because you have funny little topics in your portfolios.
With that first portfolio, what was it?
Yeah.
That was, I went to the Museum of Natural History and I shot silhouettes of people in front of
that
those
one, yeah.
crazy dioramas, you know, the dioramas
Sure.
in Africa.
Yeah.
And there was something about, and there was no other sign that this was a museum. It was just a silhouette and then a crazy, veldt or whatever out there. And these silhouettes were totally black, but they were so evocative because all you could get was a gesture or a profile. You could tell what kind of hair or the hat and the hand movements and stuff. They were just gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
I exhibited them all over. They were in group shows all over the place. So it was a really successful, and it was the very first time that I had a single project idea to just shoot this one idea.
Yeah, that's one thing I like about, at least learning your work through the website, that you take on an idea, project, and you don't. It didn't seem to go overboard like some people do, or they make it a lifelong project of this one area, but you kind of nail it, and you have a handful of images, several images, and it looks like you go on to another one. So are these things that?
Well, some of your projects are ongoing. Some of you have a final.
No. Certainly, no. But
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm assuming that it's something that piques your interest and your curiosity, and you follow up with it. You kind of self-assign, and then you look for outlets for these series. Is that kind of your workflow?
Yeah. I mean, what you're saying about how I know when I'm finished is true. There's just a certain point, and I don't know how it hits me, but there's a point where I say, okay, I'm done. Yeah. I've shot this, and I can't find anything fresh to go back for.
And the things you photograph, are they interests of yours otherwise? For example, the movie projectors, and which is an interest of mine as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What I find looking back is that I've had this interest in old technologies, dying industries. Right. So I shot projection booths, and I caught them just before they all turned into digital projection booths, which is not attractive.
You also did an amazing series on the Streitz Matza Factory.
Streitz was crazy.
You stopped me in my tracks. I really sucked that one in a long time.
They just gave me free reign. I mean, this was a set of 4 buildings that had been bought in over 100 years and added to, and all the machinery was installed in these buildings through holes in the floors and conveyors that go up and across through holes in the walls. And I was like a kid in a candy store. It was just
some of these
amazing.
Structures you could tell were just hand built out of steel for fun. I mean, this is all. This was not off the shelf. Everything in this place seemed to be made specifically to do this one thing: make matzah.
It was it was crazy. And they had to leave. They had to move out because they could no longer repair the old machines. They couldn't install new machinery, so they were about to sell the building and move upstate.
And now that building we can't afford to live in because it's all $80 million condos probably, right?
And by the way, here's a little plug. In the lobby of that building on Rivington Street, I have, I think, 11 great big prints from the Streitz series.
Oh, great.
At 150 Rivington. So
wow. Okay.
If you ask nicely in the lobby, they'll let you look over the
Did they?
print.
Can I ask
did
how
you
that came
light?
about?
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just curious how that came about, because I know that's an interesting way to get your photo seen or to have sales. I mean, did you go to the building managers or?
I actually went to the developers when they were first breaking ground,
That's
when
smart.
they first demolished the old one. I found who was developing that project, and I asked, and they said, come back in a year and a half or 2 years. They were really into the pictures. They love the pictures, and they helped me select them, and I'm really happy to have them there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually documenting Hudson Yards right now, so when they rip it down and replace it, I'm going to sell them prints.
Your great-grandchildren.
One question I have for you on that the Streitz series. Did you light anything there? Because it looks available light, but I wasn't sure.
I think I don't think I lit anything. Because
it's all minimal, but it could have been lit. But if you did, you did it well.
It depends on the environment. There are some environments, like in the projection booths, where I had to have lights. Yes. I tried shooting with no lights, and there was just darkness.
Yes, yeah.
So I took a softbox and an off camera, over in the corner for some rim lighting or whatever. But with Streitz, they had these really nice fluorescent tubes all over the place, just spaced out just enough that it was almost perfect portrait lighting. So I carried my lights probably a couple times, but I didn't really need them. I didn't use them.
It had the look. It looked available, but just perfect available.
Well, I did have a tripod, and I posed some of those portraits very carefully.
Okay.
So I moved people under the lights.
But I think that stands. That was one of my questions. I think that is, you see that throughout your work, that there is this real kind of subtle use of light and shadow, and even patina, because you have these old structures and old spaces.
I love
and I was wondering myself how much light you added to these scenarios. And I guess
there's a slightly older project called Custom Machinery, which was the name of this machine shop that a guy named Hugo ran for years and years. And I met him when he was mostly retired, but the machine shop was all set up. And I wanted to shoot it. I was just crazy to shoot it. And he was so welcoming and friendly, and he loved the company. But I went in there and started to shoot, and I wanted to shoot the machines, these big old lathes and all sorts of crazy old oil-covered steel behemoths, and it was a struggle. So I started taking in softbox and some other lights, and I realized that I could light them as if I was lighting a portrait. So I shot the machines as if I was taking a portrait, and I put up the lights from that, classic portrait angle, and it worked really well. And ironically, the people in that shop that I shot, probably 3 or 4 people, I never lit, even though they're almost like portraits. Yeah. But so it was sort of the opposite process in that environment.
Interesting. Huh. So, there's some journalistic aspect of your work, it sounds like, digging into these old stories and some documentary aspect and fine art, the final product. What do you consider yourself in terms of what kind of photographer?
I like to start from the assumption that I'm an art photographer, a fine art photographer. Mm-hmm. And I once gave a talk at I forget the venue, and I said that, and somebody was very skeptical, like, what is, fine art photography? What does that mean? I said, it's a photograph that you shoot that you intend for someone to hang on their wall. That's all there is to it. So when I shoot a place like Streitz or the machine shop, my attitude is, I don't want to be a journalist. I don't want to try to capture everything. I don't want to make sure I get the establishing shot. I don't want to necessarily get everything that I would need to get if I was shooting for a newspaper. I just want to find what's gorgeous to my eye, whether it's a portrait or a machine or something. I just want to find whatever looks beautiful and find a way to make a beautiful picture of it. So in that sense, I kind of resist being a photojournalist or a documentarian, but
I think it's pretty fair.
But there is a lot of documentary, substance in what I shoot. I'm documenting some.
Yeah. That's a good answer. Talk a little bit about the self-publishing that you do, because you do this series of annuals, which I found really interesting, and I'm sure it's a wonderful way to get your work out to people, as well as just kind of maybe reflect yourself on your year's worth of work.
That's exactly it. I mean, it's not really a money-making proposition.
Right.
I try to make enough money at selling these annuals to cover the expenses of publishing them, and I publish them through MagCloud, which is a self-publisher.
You both mentioned that, so you want to talk a little bit about MagCloud,
Yeah.
so for our listeners get an idea of what it is?
MagCloud is really wonderful. It's like Blurb, only they used to be separate companies. Blurb absorbed MagCloud, but I think the quality is really nice. They are just strictly a paperback. Mm-hmm. They have a limited number of sizes, but the quality of the printing is really pretty good.
No, this stuff is nice that you have.
And
Yes.
I mean, we use them in different ways, because Joe does limited editions of his work, and I use it so that people can just go through my website directly to MagCloud and buy my books on MagCloud. Mm-hmm. So,
and do they then print them kind of on order, or are they
it's just
available?
print on
demand.
It's just print on demand.
Yeah.
Right. That's great.
Exactly.
Oh, that's
and so I don't have to deal with it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, great.
I tell you, make it so easy these days. It's a whole other planet.
Yeah, they do.
Huh.
Really good.
And so you then just send those out to friends, family, possible editors, and people that you want to get a look at your work?
Yeah, I offer them as a limited edition of 100. Mm-hmm. I offer them all through all my newsletter and my social media and stuff, so that people can buy up at $20 a piece. And then I reserve a certain number for just my own promotional needs to send out to people on a list, some of the photography blogs, things like that. Or
the first series that caught my eye was the underground, the markings on the street for the sewers and the electric lines and whatever that's down there, which
I chuckled when I saw it because I do that. I photograph that same stuff.
Well, now I look at them in a whole other way. I mean, I've seen them myself. Of course, we all have. But how do you get those angles off them? Because you're kind of right up above the sewer.
That was a trick.
With a square. Yeah,
it's interesting you noticed. Nobody's ever asked me that before. That was some trick because I would find one of those that I wanted to photograph, home.
Maybe we should clarify, because I don't know if I clarified what we're talking about here.
Yeah, when they rip up the streets, they put little markings on where there's gas lines and water lines and sewer lines and stuff.
Like
they're ripping up my street at home right now. So I have iridescent green, orange, and blue, all kinds. It's hieroglyphics, my whole block right now.
It's a language.
Yeah, it is. It's
I
great
can't
stuff.
believe you found the positive side to having your street ripped up on your block.
Well, actually, because I have a neighbor who I really despise, and her parking spot is gone now for a week, so I'm kind of gloating inside.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm talking about you, Iris.
I was going to say, I hope she doesn't listen to your podcast.
She won't hear it.
We'll cut it out anyway. we cut all Alan's rants out.
Okay.
But
it comes off as a Sunday sermon by the time they finished editing here.
So there's these, Joe has this series of photos of the markings that the workers put on the street to show where the line.
They're like hieroglyphics.
And they are. They're a language
so that they don't
themselves.
go take a jackhammer and go into the street and hit a gas line. So they mark them all off first.
Right. And the angles you get turn them into their own separate piece of art, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about those shots here?
So what I do is when I discover one of these, I go out with a tripod and with the remote shutter release on my camera, so I can hold the button in one hand, and I put the camera, extend the tripod all the way, and I just tuck it into my belt and extend it out over the street.
That's a boom.
So it's like a boom. It's like it's about, I say I get it up to about 8 or 9 feet, and then I have it angled so it's perfectly perpendicular to the street. And then I'll just take a series, I'll have it set up to take 5 or 6, let's say 4 or 6 bracketed exposures. And then I'll get it down and get out of the street so I don't get hit by a car, and look at them and see if it came out, if I framed it right, because I have no way to see how my framing is. But I use also a really wide angle lens. I'm usually shooting those at like a 14 millimeter end of my 14 to 24. So what I've got is, I can shoot at
That's
f8.
a heavy, bulky system you're having.
Mm-hmm.
You must look like you're like fly fishing for a shark.
Nobody can figure out what I'm doing.
Yeah,
Nobody has any idea why
yeah.
I've got this boom sticking out over the street and a remote. And
Now, you really should wear a hazmat suit while you do that and really blow people away.
or at least an orange vest.
Yes.
And a helmet.
Yeah, right. Just block off the street. Make it easier.
Okay, we're going to take a short break for traffic and weather and come back with more with Joe and Sarah. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. The best way to support the show is by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For links to gear and more information on today's guests, check out the show notes in your podcast app or visit our homepage on the B&H Explorer website and join the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. And now, back to the show.
Okay, we are back. Joe, I want to ask you about cameras. I was looking at your stuff, and you shoot a lot with shallow focus, and it looks medium format. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's no accident. But I'm shooting with a Nikon D850.
Really?
So it's a 35 millimeter size sensor.
Yeah.
The full sensor.
It comes. A lot of your pictures, I'm looking at them, and I if you'd have told me they're medium format, I would have believed it because they have a certain look about them and I don't know why.
Well, I can tell you some of what I do. I mean, one of my big influences was Alex Soth. When I first was shooting, I had a portfolio review with Alec. I had met him a couple times, and I got a portfolio review with him, and he was the first person ever to sit me down and say, you should be shooting more people, not just, buildings and some of your, he said, you should consider doing more portraits. And that turned my practice around. That really turned my head around.
And why do you think he...
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Yeah, how come?
I was shooting a lot of stuff that looked like I was nervous to go up and meet people. And that's one of Alex's things. He's talked about being a shy person and how difficult, but how important it was to his practice to learn to work with people and do portraits.
I think a good teacher will also force you out of your comfort zone also.
And I think he also saw that I socially was capable of really talking to people, meeting people, and putting them at ease. So I think he gave me, but this is in addition to the question you asked. I mean, that's an aside. So I really love that look, the large format or medium format look. So one thing that does that is if you not only have a shallow depth of field, but if you crop to a 4:5 image, because that's the 8:10s are all like the 4:5 aspect ratio.
So you are messing with my head.
Yeah, it's a subtle way to give that impression. I don't always do that.
It worked. I mean, because I'm noticing that there's
that.
something medium format. That might have been it. Just
and the shallow depth of field.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that I didn't notice. But
I love that look.
You crop the format from 2:3.
Those are the two things that I do. Because
right.
a 2:3 aspect ratio looks like a 35 millimeter.
Right off the bat, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
He does a lot of other things too. I don't know if you ever talk about them.
What do I do?
What do you do that you don't want to talk about, huh?
Well, the way you sometimes do people in a room, right? Where you do the room and then you do the person and
I have a lot of this doesn't have to do with maybe the medium format look.
Right,
this is one of my portrait tricks. I carry a softbox. I'm shooting all by myself. I just have myself, my little carry case with my tripod and a foldable softbox.
It's not so little, by the way.
But it means I can travel by myself. But what that means is I've got to set the camera up with a remote shutter release.
Right.
And I've got to be my own lighting person. So I set everything up and I pick up the softbox and I carry it over and I put it right over the person's head. And I trigger the camera a few times. And then I step out of the frame and I say, stay right there. And I take a few more frames. And then in Photoshop, I can put the frame with me in it and the frame where I stepped out. And I can basically erase myself by, using a mask to take myself out because it's the image is locked down on a tripod. The two images perfectly aligned.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
So I get this look with a softbox that's really close over the head of the person, which gives it a nice wraparound effect. It's not like a distant harsh.
Right.
And so it gives a mysterious kind of look. It's like you get this really soft light as if it's from a great big light source, but it's not visible in the frame.
And how did you kind of come to that? Is that a product of having to do it because you're working by yourself?
Yeah, basically.
And
I did that in the booth.
Inventive.
When I was working on the booth, that's where I came up with that idea that I could erase myself.
Right.
Or my assistant. I used to take my son Julian with me, and he would be my assistant. But he would do the same thing.
Kids make great cheap assistants.
Oh,
right?
I paid him, but he was affordable.
Mine grew up. I got to pay for mine again now. So.
And I know on your website you have a pretty extensive list of your gear. Is there a reason why you put that out there? Is that just for potential clients to see what you're shooting with, or is it just kind of a memory? Because there's a whole ton of lenses there.
Yeah, it's most of those lenses are sold or on the shelf.
Okay.
I've basically come down to two lenses that I use for 98% of my work, which is this Sigma 50 millimeter art lens,
the
which is
1.4,
just
right?
fantastic.
Yeah.
And there's a story behind that. I used to have my carry around bag used to be 24 millimeter and an 85. I figured between those two, I had a lot of flexibility. But over a year or two, I found everything I was shooting was too tight. I kept finding that I wish I had backed up from that 85. And I kept telling myself to back up, to step back. And I kept shooting and that all my pictures were too tight. So finally, I just started carrying a 50 instead. And it solved the problem. Now I have a lot more breathing room in my images. So I've been shooting with this 50 millimeter for a while now. And it seems crazy. It's such an ordinary,
you go through all the things and you come back to a 50.
prosaic lens. It's what I grew up with when I was, 15 years old. But it's exactly what I want.
That's great.
And I carried the 24, and that's it.
So, Sarah, let me ask you. Here we are starting to geek out a little bit on lenses and focal lengths and stuff. Are you glazing over, or now that you're a photographer, you're really into this? And
my phone is good enough. No,
my phone is basically good enough. I kind of glaze over.
Right. Even now that you have.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I actually. I won a Juror Prize like a year ago, and it was a gift certificate to Fuji, which was what I used. So that was a great gift certificate, and I upgraded about 3 months ago. I upgraded my camera body and I really love it. And I say it's the first time in my life I've actually cared about a piece of equipment.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Yeah.
So you're part of the club, eh?
Not exactly.
I'm
No, we
kinda
have
the same way.
we have a strong contingency of Fuji shooters in this company that definitely, yeah, there are people that just love it.
Yeah, it's nice.
So we talked a little bit about how, maybe Joe talked to you, helped you, worked with you on some of your edits and maybe developing some of the style. Have you seen your work change a little bit, seeing Sarah's work? Have you thought about your portraiture or different ways to approach it or anything?
No.
Okay. So back
Thanks
to
for
the next
joining
one.
us, folks. This is a wrap of another fine show here.
But maybe we can talk a little bit about, just when you're looking at Sarah sees your work, you go out and you shoot and she gives her opinion. Talk a little bit about that exchange and when do you ask for opinions and when do you not? What kind of projects, what kind of series, things like that?
I especially get a lot of advice when I do my annual. When I do my annual book, I'm looking through all the pictures of the year and I've got it narrowed. I've got to end up with something like 35 or so pictures for the book. I've got it narrowed down to, 50 or whatever. And also the sequencing is important. And Sarah is a big influence over those decisions because, I took the pictures. I can't kill my babies. I can't say, oh, but I love taking this picture. I can't. And Sarah's she's always had a good eye. It was actually using her camera a lot when we first met, which you mentioned. And so she knows how to photograph and frame and she knows what works. So she's a big influence over things like that.
I think it's great that you have each other to have this little, what do you think kind of situation going on, because trusting somebody else with your photographs or their opinion or actually giving over your control, that's a biggie. And it's nice, I think, when you have somebody who can look at, okay, I trust them. They're going to make the right call on this because they get what I'm doing. So that's
any
a great treat.
instance where, one of you was very kind of sure that this was the right image to go with and then you're like, you know what? Despite everything, I have to go with my gut on this one. And say no.
We promised our audience a fight.
Yeah,
we never fight.
I've overruled you though sometimes. I say, I'm sorry, I just love this image. It's going in the book.
Right.
But
Right. And I might be the same way. No, sometimes I see mine up on the wall and then I go back and I say, how come I didn't use the other one?
Sure.
And I might go back
my fault.
to the other one. I have something specific that I'm trying to portray, especially in the portraits.
Right.
I know that when I was doing my first project, a lot of times I didn't want to use the really gritty photos. And my daughter in particular, when I had sequenced everything and Joe had been through everything, she was like, what happened to that photo where she looked so, down and out or whatever? And I was like, I got rid of it. And she said, you have to put it back in.
Yeah.
So that can happen.
Yeah. And can you talk a little about your post-process work? How much, touching up do you do? Any cropping, those kind of issues?
Almost nothing. And Joe does it for me.
Okay.
Basically, but it's photojournalism. So,
exactly. That's
so there's
my
really
question.
nothing.
Well, it's mostly adjusting and cleaning up. You're not really trying to change
No.
things. You're just trying to tweak it.
I did work in a darkroom when I was when I was a late teenager and stuff. So I understand that process. And I've learned a little, enough of Photoshop to...
you dodge, you burn, you bring out a little bit.
But mostly he does that for me. He's like, he'll never let me send out an image without him having... looked at it and make sure it's perfect. So
put his watermark and copyright on
yeah,
it.
Exactly. I'm really, really lucky. I always say, well, what would I do without you? And he said, well, you would pay somebody to do that.
Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
It'd be very expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not keeping tabs, are you?
Nope.
And do you, other than the cropping to get to the ratio, what's your kind of post-process philosophy?
Oh my.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do a lot of work on a picture.
Yeah.
I especially like to, I bracket everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I do exposure bracketing on almost everything I shoot because I like to come home and, I'll throw out 2/3 of the pictures, but I get to pick the perfect exposure. And so sometimes I'll layer pictures that I've bracketed, or I'll shoot a lot of something. If I really like something, I'll just keep shooting and shooting. And sometimes I'll find that the face in this shot matches up really nicely with where the taxi was and in that. And so I'll composite. So I'm shameless.
Do you shoot raw?
Yeah, I always
Because,
shoot raw.
and you still have a great need to do a lot of bracketing, even though you're shooting in RAW.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's totally necessary, but it makes me feel secure
Okay, that's all that counts.
to have
Okay,
three
yeah. No, I get it.
exposures on most of those pictures.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
And I'm not ashamed to go in and just erase, cigarette butts and stuff from the street or something that's ugly, or
I add them.
remove a sign. Well, yeah, there you go. That's your aesthetic.
But this gets back to the idea we talked about being a fine art photographer as opposed to a journalist or a documentarian who's and how about talking a little bit about like photography in the home? I mean, are you guys always talking photography? Are you talking about, do you go to shows, other photographers? And you mentioned that your kids are, artistic in that sense, and your daughter chimes in on the work. How's photography play a role in the home?
I mean, we go on these photo walks all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That we've been doing that for many, many years.
You mean to galleries?
To galleries and stuff. So I think that also helped train my eye originally. Yeah, well, I mean, we're always looking at work, talking about it.
It's kind of interesting. I mean, to some degree, both of you have come to photography. I mean, you were photographers when you were young, but it seems that you both, you had your other careers, and now you're coming to photography, and well, you're still young,
youngish.
young,
Thanks.
but
Yes, you're young.
but with a different perspective than somebody who might have started, straight out at 22, saying, "I want to be a photographer." Or,
True.
So, do you think that brings some perspective, some calmness to what you're putting out and the work you're doing?
I think for me, it's in some ways, I think that's why my work has been so successful. I think a lot of documentary young people, they're looking for a project. And the project found me, basically.
Yeah.
It was my work. And so I understand the topic in a way that, I don't know anybody else in a way, like who's a photographer who knows as much about incarceration as I do. And so I bring an understanding to it. And I think it's hard when you're starting out as a young photographer to immerse yourself in an issue. And how do you understand all of the nuances of an issue?
Or even find the issue.
Or find the issue.
I didn't think about that, but it's very true that when you have something like that as a goal, as an endpoint, that definitely gives you a different perspective.
Right.
And I get it. There's a lot of young people who might have a lot of talent, but they don't have the project.
The first time I went to a portfolio review, I was so nervous to show my work to somebody else. And there was a really good reception to my work, but I heard a few times, "You're not the best photographer here today by any stretch, but you have a really, really good story. You know how to tell a story." And I do. I mean, I was a writer, so it's just, what's interesting to me is it's really hard for me to write now. It's like my brain has shifted into something visual, and I can still write, but I don't like to write as much anymore. I do think that your brain, focuses on one or another. Or sometimes I just think that the photos tell the story and I don't have anything to say anymore.
Well, that's what's beautiful about the way you did it, is because you let your subjects do the talking in their own handwriting, which just further sends the message home. It really, really does.
So what's your, what's your favorite thing about photography? What do you enjoy the most?
I guess I have two answers. One thing I have found is that one thing I really enjoy is walking the streets of New York. And partly I'm scouting for new projects. Partly I'm photographing some of my favorite things. And partly I'm running errands, and I have my camera with me. But that's turned out to be kind of my meditative part of the day. That turns out to be something that I need to do all the time to have a peace of mind. So that is really important. And my camera's back there. One thing I discovered is that no matter how cold I am or how cold my hands are or how hot it is or whatever, as soon as I see something I want to photograph, everything goes away. All of a sudden, my hands are not too cold. I'm not too hot. I don't notice that I'm sweating. All of a sudden, my focus just takes everything away except what I'm seeing and what I'm trying to frame, and how I'm going to get it. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I would hate to live without that, focus, that kind of a meditative state.
You just reminded me of something happened a few years ago. Right down the street, I was out taking a walk with a camera, and again, just getting lost visually. And I was photographing. There were these chairs with wires in them, and there were some wonderful shadows going in between the chairs and the ground. and I found myself sprawled over the chair, hanging upside down, photographing the legs and the shaft. And all of a sudden I feel a tap on my shoulder. It was a guard. He came over. He thought I was sick.
Oh, my.
He said, "You okay?" I go, "Yeah, I'm just taking pictures." He goes, "Oh, you look like you're having a seizure or something." He's like, but I realized I just went away. It was about photographing this stuff. And yeah, you're right. It goes away. The world vanishes. And that is a form of therapy. It centers you. It really does.
I was trying to take a picture one time and somebody got out of a car and came up. It was somebody I knew. And he said, "Hi, Joe." And I swear it took me 30 seconds to be able to speak. I was like, I had to totally rewrite my brain for a minute there.
And folks, that's what photography is. There we go.
You said there were two things. What was the other one?
The other thing is when I'm taking a portrait, there's something really magical about being alone in a room with another person and really connecting with them. Connecting socially, but also artistically. I've been really into this project that I haven't put anything out there yet. I haven't released it yet, and I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm taking pictures of artists. And so it's really fun to connect with these people who are artists and talk at that level about what they're doing, what I'm doing, and be able to actually explain kind of what I'm going for. And there's something really magical about portraits.
Yeah. All right, that's a pretty good transition. Sarah, what's your favorite thing? And
I think it's getting into people's lives and people's heads, that it gives you permission. I've always been really curious about people, and I would say I was always interested in the backstory of people. I think most lawyers in my position were more interested in just what happened on a particular day. I was always interested in what brought people to where they were. And so photography is a way of, I get into people's homes and they introduce me to their families, and I've been in every part of the city and every different kind of place. And I love that. I also love that I think it takes me out of my brain, and I think I live a lot in my brain, and that can be like really noisy or something. And that when you're taking photos, it's the meditative thing that Joe is talking about. It's like that quiets down, and I really like that.
all right.
Okay. Well, it's been a wonderful over an hour now of talking with you guys. Upcoming shows, events, things happening. What do you guys want to plug? Anything coming up here?
Well, my work is on display right now in the Legislative Office Building in Albany.
Okay.
Which makes me really happy because that's where policy can be changed. What else do I have coming up? Oh, I have a show in a gallery in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
The Bedroom Project. It's going to be in the Blue Sky Gallery in February.
All right.
And we're actually going out there. I'm really excited about it because it's it's really nice to cross over into the gallery world.
Sure.
And if you're listening, you're all invited. It's a small space, but we'll take turns, right?
The Blue Sky Gallery, I think it's a pretty big space.
Okay, then you're all invited. We'll look at it once.
I don't know. They said they had 500 people pass through there at the opening. That seems pretty big to me.
And have you done the prints? Are they
shipped? Yeah, they're shipped out there
Okay.
already.
Do you guys print at home or do you?
No,
in
not
this
those.
case-
They're too big for printing at home.
Okay.
In March, I'm having selections of all of my work in the Katona Library,
Oh,
which is great because that's where the prisons are located. And so the people are inviting me. I think they're trying to get more interest from the community to going into the prison.
that's great. I mean,
That's actually it because it softens up. Because you think prisons, again, it's hardened criminals,
Yeah.
but you're
Yeah.
photographing a human thing here. It's very human, and that's the beauty of it.
Some of my work is in, there's an exhibition at Sundance.
Mhm.
And so some of my work is accompanying somebody's VR, AR reel. It's called Still Here. What else? I actually have a lot. I don't know which of my photos are going to be in yet, but there's a woman who has a book coming out called Marking Time, Art in the Era of Mass Incarceration. And there's going to be an exhibit at MoMA PS1 starting in April. And I know I'm probably going to have one or two prints in that.
fantastic. That's
And
great.
I'm not sure what else, but that seems like enough, right?
It seems like enough. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's
That's what I
wonderful.
say.
All right.
I've been just incredibly lucky at getting attention to my work, and
Should
that's-
continue. That's
yeah.
good stuff.
Okay.
and when you have a mission, I think it's easier to try to push your work out into the world because it doesn't feel as personal.
You're not pushing yourself.
You're not
Right,
pushing
right,
yourself.
right.
It's
Mhm.
like you're pushing an idea. So I'm pretty shameless about going after any possibility.
Yeah.
and I'm hoping to have one in the Bedford Hills prison. So I'm working on that right now, and that would be great because that would be my second pop-up prison show. So,
What about websites, Instagram? If people want to check up on your work?
I'm at lifeafterlifeinprison.com.
Okay, cool.
So
All right.
thanks.
Joe.
Well, I mentioned the 150 Rivington lobby,
Okay.
which you're allowed to go in if you ask nicely at the desk in very small groups,
Tell
because
them
it is a
Joe-
private
tell them
building.
Joe sent you.
Yeah, it's a private building, so they don't want crowds or anything.
Yeah, sure.
I'm about to release another book. I have this collection that I've been developing over years of street art and graffiti that are hearts and valentines and various forms of street art that are hearts. I've collected them all in a book that I'm going to release hopefully in time for Valentine's Day. So I'm going to put that up. I haven't even announced it yet, so you have to check the website and see how to order it. But that should be fun.
wonderful.
It's
Yeah.
got like 30 or 40 pictures of all kinds of crazy hearts from all over.
And how has I guess you'd call it self-publishing in general changed your kind of outlook about photography? And here you are just putting a book out in a course of a month, basically. I don't know how long you've been editing it and putting it together, but Valentine's Day is coming up soon, so
It goes pretty fast, the editing process. Once you've done one of these books, you can kind of use it as a template.
There's a
for the
template.
next.
Yeah, just dropping in stuff. It's plug and play.
Yeah, I use InDesign.
By the way, one thing I just do want to come back to, you did a series, and I mentioned it early on before we started recording, about ATMs, 24-hour ATMs. I thought it was just kind of, all right, what this is, and I fell into it. I told you, like, I was up
Kind of
last
wild.
night. Yeah, and I don't know how many you have, but there are these little independent ATM machines, and you see them all the time, but I never looked at them that way, and I just kept falling deeper and deeper into these pictures, and they're wonderful.
I don't know what drew me to them, but there's something weird about a machine like that actually is not advertising anything. There's no commercial on it. It's not trying to plug anything. It's just this machine, often beat up, sometimes
Abused to no end.
abused, sometimes just totally burned out.
Yeah.
Or sometimes beautiful and untouched and
And you have one shot where there isn't even one in it. There's just a piece of plywood where it used,
Where it used to be,
and,
right.
and it was like perfect. But
And that's what I love about Joe's work more than anything is that whatever he's working on, then that's all I can see. And it's things that it's stuff that you never notice.
mundane
you
stuff.
never notice. And I remember so vividly when he was photographing Marina Abramovich, and I never wanted to go sit with her. Like it was not something that interested me. And then I looked at one of his photos and I was like, oh, I want to go do that. And that's how I feel about how he makes me see New York City. And it's just an incredible experience to be along for that ride. It's fun.
That's good stuff. All right. Well, we didn't get a fight out of you, but we got great conversation.
Just real
It's all
quick,
good.
website
Yeah.
and Instagram.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah. What are you going? Yeah.
well, you can just start and find everything by going first to the website, which is josephholmes.io.
Tell us about the IO real
Yeah.
quick. because
Okay.
I was curious.
Joseph Holmes is a pretty well-known photographer in California who does landscapes, and he had
Yes.
josephholmes.com.
Gotcha.
So I wanted to have, just my name as my website. And IO, I tell people, is named for one of the moons of Jupiter, I believe.
Yeah.
IO. But that's not really what it stands for. It's the Indian Ocean domain.
Is that what it is? Okay.
But I like it. It's
Oh.
just short. It's memorable. So it's josephholmes.io. And from there, you can click through to Instagram.
Great talking with you guys.
Thanks.
Wrap of another show. Are you a regular subscriber to our show? If you are not, all you have to do is head on over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Overcast, or Spotify and sign up. It's free. All we need to know is your shoe size, and even that's optional. And do keep in mind, you can always find us on the B&H Explorer website, as well as the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. For now, my name is Alan Weitz, and on behalf of John Harrison, Jason Tables, thank you so much for tuning in today.